Hi my friends, I'm so glad that you could join me for another Bible story today. Last week I told you the story of Isaac and Rebekah and their two sons, twins, Jacob and Esau. Jacob was his mother's favorite son and Esau was his father's favorite son. And Jacob and Esau didn't get along. But many years later, when they were both adults, they made peace with each other. Well, today I want to tell you the story of Jacob and his sons, in particular, Joseph. While I'm telling you this story, what you can do is listen really carefully. And when you hear something that sounds like a good idea, you can give a thumbs up. And if you hear something that sounds like people are making some bad choices and it's a bad idea, you can give a thumbs down. And if you're not sure, you can kind of go in the middle. So this is the story of Joseph, at least the beginning of the story. Jacob had many children. The Bible tells us about 12 of his sons. That's a lot of sons. And we know he also had daughters. Unfortunately, the Bible doesn't tell us much about them, but you know they were there. They are part of this story. So Jacob has 12 sons, and when Jacob's quite old, he has a son named Joseph. And Joseph and his brothers, they don't get along. And there's two reasons for this. The first reason is that often Jacob's sons were out in the fields or in the pastures looking after their flocks, and he needed someone to check on them. So he would send Joseph out into the field to check on his brothers. When Joseph would see his brothers up to no good or getting into things, he would bring back bad reports to his dad. Joseph was a tattler, and nobody likes a tattler. The second reason was that Joseph was his father's favorite son. He loved Joseph more than all the rest. And he didn't just love him, he showed how much he loved him. And that made his brothers, Joseph's brothers, very angry. Jacob loved his son Joseph so much that he had a special coat made for him. A special coat that was in beautiful colors, and it had long sleeves. It was a coat like none of his other brothers had ever worn or could even dream of. So Joseph was a tattler, and he was loved more by his father. So he and his brothers did not get along. One day, Joseph woke up from a dream, super excited. So excited he ran to tell his brothers. He said, listen, last night I had a dream. And in my dream, all of us were out in the field and we were bundling up grain. And suddenly my bundle of grain stood up tall. And all of your bundles of grain, they bowed down to my bundle of grain. Well, Joseph's brothers were not nearly as excited about this dream as he was. When he was gone, they muttered and said, "Who does Joseph think he is? That we're all going to bow down to him? Ridiculous." Well, Joseph had another dream, and again he was so excited he ran to tell his father. He said, Father, listen, I had a dream. Last night I dreamed that the sun and the moon and 11 stars all bowed down to me. Now, Jacob loved his son Joseph, but this was a bit much. He said, do you think that your mother and I and your 11 brothers are all going to bow down to you? Who do you think you are? Joseph. Well, one day, all of Joseph's brothers were out in the pasture, and they were taking care of the flocks, and the pasture was quite far from home, so Jacob needed someone to go and check on them. So Jacob sent Joseph out to the pasture. When the brothers saw Joseph coming from a distance, they all began to grumble and complain. And they're like, here comes Joseph the dreamer. Here comes Joseph with his special coat. "Oh, I can't stand him. What are we going to do about him?" And some of the brothers stopped and said, "Wait. We know. Let's kill him and throw him into a pit." And their brother Reuben said, "No, no, 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 no. Hold on. No. Don't kill him. Just throw him into the pit. Don't kill him." Reuben figured that later on he could go back secretly and he could pull Joseph out of the pit and bring him home. He knew how upset his father would be if something happened to Joseph. So when Joseph got closer, the brothers ran up and they took his coat and they dumped him into the pit. And then they sat around and they kept looking after their flocks and eating their lunch. And in the distance, one of them, Judah, saw a caravan of traders. And Judah said, "Wait, I have an idea. Let's sell Joseph to the traders." So they did. They sold their brother Joseph for 20 pieces of silver. And then those traders, they sold Joseph to some people in Egypt to be their slave. They sold Joseph into slavery. While all of this was happening, while they were selling him to the traders, Reuben had been away. And when Reuben got back and he found out what had happened, he was so upset. He felt so much guilt. He was going to save his brother, but now he couldn't. Joseph was gone. He cried and he tore his clothes. He felt so bad. The other brothers, they knew though that they had to hide what they'd done. Their dad was going to be really upset. So what they did is they took Joseph's coat and they dipped it in the blood of a goat and they brought it back to their father and they gave it to him, and Jacob wept. He wept and he held the coat that was covered in blood and he tore his own coat. He was so devastated because he thought that his son Joseph had been eaten by a wild animal. And Jacob grieved for days, and none of his sons and none of his daughters could comfort him. That is the beginning of the story of Joseph and his brothers. And next week we'll continue because there's lots more to come in this story. Before we go, I'd like to bless you. So if you're sitting with someone else, you can take your palm and put it on their arm or their shoulder, or you can take your palm and put it over your heart. May God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine on you and be gracious to you, and may the love of God flow over and all around you and give you peace. I hope you have a good week, and I hope you get along better with any siblings than Joseph did with his. We'll see you next Sunday.